Today, we're talking about the biggest challenges for the Chicago Bulls and how they fixed them this season. And so before we go ahead and we jump into it, I first want to remind you to slam dunk on that subscribe button, just like Modest Buzelis slam dunks in games. And so in exchange for slamming on that subscribe button, I'm going to give you nothing but daily content around the Chicago Bulls. And so make sure that you hit that like, you hit that subscribe, and you join the Chicago Bulls Insider family as we talk nothing but Chicago Bulls basketball. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump into it as we're talking about the biggest challenges for the Chicago Bulls this season and really how they fixed them. And so there's two points that really come to mind with this team. And I just think that if they can fix these two, they will really give themselves a chance to take a step forward as a team. Hopefully they can get out of the play-in situation and at least get into the playoffs. And so, I think that there's several other things that they're going to need to tighten up. But again, if they can get past these two, I think it will go a long way. And so the first thing that the Bulls really need to fix here, and one of their biggest challenges, is just getting off to better starts. I think that that is something that I've talked about here on the show going back to the preseason, that they would get off to slow starts. They would be able to overcome those slow starts and get the win. We've also seen that really throughout the season here, now that they are 9-8 at the time of this current podcast recording. But still, over the last couple games, I think that it's gotten a lot worse. And I think that that's something that really Nikola Vucevic was trying to say in his post game after the Wizards game, is just really that the way the Bulls are playing, it's not sustainable. Like, you cannot continue to get off to these poor starts like this and then think that you're going to give yourself chances to win a lot of games like that. Like, that is not really what the elite teams do. They go out and they take care of business against the teams that they should certainly beat. Now, yes, do you run into some tough, challenges early on, throughout the season? Yes. I mean, teams can jump on you, but it's not going to be a night-to-night basis where you're coming out with just not the right energy. And so I think that that is really the key, is just that the team needs to understand, in order for them to take a step forward as constructed right now as a roster, they're going to need to come out with max energy. They have to have max effort, and they really have to be mindful every night of how they are approaching each quarter. And you especially need to start off well, because what we saw against the Pelicans is just not good enough. That was a team that only averaged 25 points a quarter, and you gave them 37 in the first quarter. You gave them 74 in the first half, in which they scored 143. That's just not going to be good enough. And then, against the Wizards, 70 points in the first half, and then going back to the Utah Jazz game, the Bulls were down 13-4 in that game. Remember, that game went into double overtime. And so that's another thing to think about too, that really nobody's talking about, is that when you're going out and you're not coming out the right way, even when you get back into the game, it makes it that much more tougher. Because even this Pelicans game, the final score doesn't show it, but the Bulls did cut this game down to single digits, I believe, a couple times. But I think because they had to use so much energy to get back into the game, like, it's tougher to win those games. And so if you just give yourself a better chance at the start, then if you're able to go ahead and naturally kick it into another gear as the game progresses, you're going to give yourself a better chance to win the game. And again, not taking anything away from all the other NBA teams out there, because yes, they can win any game at any given time, but you just want to be able to look back at games and say, hey, we didn't beat ourselves because we didn't come out with the right energy and the right effort. Like, you don't want to have that. So getting off to a better start, that's going to be huge. And the next one, it's going to be defense. And the defense is something that, look, it's going to come down to the energy. It's going to come down to effort. It's going to come down to being more mindful, but also too, it's going to have to come down to, I think, some personnel adjustments. And so, I think that is really, where the question now lies with AK and the front office. Like, is he going to make an in-season trade, or is he going to just wait and then try to address a lot of this stuff in free agency and in the NBA draft? Like, that's another way to do so. Then also too, I think that Billy Donovan, which I think he's done a pretty good job, he's going to have to make some more adjustments out there and try to figure out, different ways to just maximize the team defensively out there because, the team has struggled on the interior, which is something that we knew was going to happen, and not saying that it's just solely on Vooch and everything else because you don't have Zach Collins out there. So I think that that's going to help you. I do think that with Jalen Smith, he's playing a lot better defensively. And Vooch, we know, he struggles defensively, but we also know what he gives you, as far as getting the rebounds and on offense and everything else. And so, I think that really what it comes down to on defense there is that you have to bring a little bit more, I think, intensity there. I don't think that we're necessarily seeing the type of intensity that we saw early on in the season with this team. And one of the things that was talked about during the broadcast in yesterday's game with Stacey King is he pointed out like the switching for the Bulls. And so, there's nothing wrong with switching and stuff like that, but they were switching before they even ran into like real resistance on the screen and stuff like that. And so, just as a defender, like playing defense and stuff like that, I've always felt that the intensity of the defense rises up when you actually challenge the screener. And so that means that the screener has to work to go ahead and force that switch. And so I don't think that we necessarily are seeing that with the Bulls. And I do think that if you can really step up that type of intensity, that's where you can start to maybe get into the passing lane. That's where opposing offenses now maybe get a little flustered because the guy that's handling the ball, maybe he picks up the basketball too quickly. And then that's where you can get into trap situations and stuff like that because the defense on the perimeter is a lot more intense. And that's something that the Bulls can tighten up, just with their effort level. Then also, too, when you're talking about like the mindfulness, which I've said that a couple times, but it does come down to really just understanding like attention to detail and knowing that like, hey, in order for us to get the results we need, like we need to lock into these little details. And so, if there's a mismatch in the post, fine, like I get that. But are you making it tough for the entry pass? That's something that was mentioned as well. Like those are little things that really make a difference on defense. And then also too, when you know that there's a mismatch, you have to be connected a little bit more defensively there. And so, if you're on that back line, you have to be ready for the help. And then also too, your helper has to be ready for that. And you have to always be constantly communicating. You cannot afford to have blown assignments, especially with the way, the Bulls are constructed. You really don't have, somebody that's an elite rim protector down there. You don't necessarily have, another kind of on-ball defender like that, other than Isaac Okoro. I think you can throw Ayo Dosunmu in there and then Patrick Williams when he's locked in. But, aside from that, like it's going to be a challenge for this team every night. Like they have to do it by committee, which is something that Billy Donovan has talked about. And I love like one of the quotes that I saw here from Ayo Dosunmu. And so I saw this in a couple different places. I saw this from, a Clutch Point article, and it's actually something too that it really talks about not only the effort level, but also to the attention to detail. And so if you guys want to check this out, one of the articles that I saw this in was right here on Clutch Points. And I just love what Ayo Dosunmu says here. And so this is what he says, just kind of paraphrasing this and picking it up because he's asked about like just the common sense at times for the Bulls. And he says like, look, coach is telling us 1,000 times to box out on film, and we're going to the glass. We're not boxing out, standing around. He's been completely honest with us. He's telling us, if we don't do this, we're going to get these results. We keep saying the stove is hot and we keep touching the stove. And so, just really talking about like, you know that you need to do these things. Coach is telling you need to do these things, but still you have those lapses there. And so that comes down to, again, just this effort level here. You have to be able to do that. And another thing too that I saw, just out of this article and just kind of going into just really the Bulls having to do it by committee. One of the things that Billy Donovan says is just that our team, outside of maybe Isaac Okoro, we don't have one guy on the team right now that you would sit there and this guy's a defensive stopper. Like this is what this guy hangs his hat on. It's not one guy's fault. It's all of us. It's the coaches, the players, it's the team issue. And so again, collectively buying in and doing the necessary stuff every night to go out there and win games and things like that. And so, lastly, one of the other things too that Coby White said, again, and I love this quote too, is he says, like, we don't have the personnel of an Oklahoma City Thunder with all the individual defenders being really good. This is what he told Sam Smith of NBA.com. So we have to do it collectively. We have to do it as a unit. We have to buy into it and do it on a consistent basis. We've got to stay together and figure it out. And so, loving those quotes there from Coby White, Ayo Dosunmu, and Billy Donovan. And so before we jump out of here, just going now and looking at what I said too, as far as like the personnel, and just really AK has a decision to make, because you can go ahead and you can give up, maybe some of your young pieces here, and you can address, a player that can help you with the interior. I think it's going to take a little bit more than just one player. I think that, look, for the Bulls, they do need another on-ball defender. They're going to need, some more interior presence, and it's not just one center. Like, they might need a center and a power forward. And so, that's something that AK will have to think about here, is just really what is he going to do, because he's going to have the options. He's got expiring contracts and things like that with the trade deadline coming up. And then also too, if he doesn't do that, is he thinking ahead here for this NBA draft? Because there are certainly players that can help the Chicago Bulls. Hopefully they're a lot more, just ready to go, once you draft them and everything else. And so he has that option. And also too, the team is still really too, I think, just trying to figure out what they're going to do here with Noe Essengue, which I didn't talk about this in yesterday's video. He did play a couple minutes, and it was a tough outing for him because Zion Williams took it to him, and he drew a foul and everything else. And so the physicality is something that, Noe Essengue will certainly have to learn, as you see that he got reassigned back to the Windy City Bulls. And so he's doing a great job there. But, the question is, will he be, in a position to contribute at some point? I know it's going to be a project here, but these are some of the things that the Bulls have to think about when they're trying to address really this defense, the personnel. You continue to see that the team is kind of shuffling, starting lineups and stuff like that. They had to do this in yesterday's game because there was no Vooch. And I would expect that the Bulls are probably going to have to maybe think about this on a night-to-night basis out there to kind of match, what the other team is doing out there offensively to them. And so anyway, you guys let me know in the comments what you guys are thinking. What are some of the biggest challenges here for the Chicago Bulls? Again, not taking anything away from the other stuff that this team will need to clean up. Like, yes, they need to get back to playing more crisp offense, like with the movement and everything else. Like, you can't get into a situation like we saw in yesterday's game where they're just coming down and just shooting these 3-pointers and stuff like that. Like, that's not the way that you want the offense to run. And that's just really not the way that this offense was really winning games early on. There was just movement, getting out into space and breaking and everything else, but it's all connected as one. Like, you have to be able to get stops to where you're not just inbounding it all the time. Like, you're getting out into those opportunities, into the fast break. And if you're not finishing, the fact that the opposing defense is scattered, that's where you're able to really get these teams in trouble there. And so, yes, that is something that can be cleaned up too. But I just think that the two biggest things are getting off to a better start, and defensively, you have to lock in. And so even if the personnel is not there that you need, you still will need to go out there and lock up defensively with that effort and that energy. And so anyway, you guys let me know in the comments what you guys are thinking. And as we always say, look, go Bulls, and I will see you guys on the next one. All right, peace.